Barnaby Buckle was a little boy who lived in a big city with his mum. Barnaby had lots of toys, but his favorite by far was his kettle whistle. It could whistle high and low, fast and slow, but most of all, he loved how it sang to the wind. Whenever Barnaby took his kettle whistle out to play, it would sing to the wind, and then the wind would do all sorts of funny things. Sometimes it would playfully flick the leaves of trees back and forth, making them go crunch, crunch, crunch like autumn had come early. Or when it got really windy, it would make the clouds scud across the sky like a herd of woolly mammoths running from a saber-toothed tiger. One day, Barnaby and his kettle whistle were playing in the park when suddenly a great big gust of wind swept through and snatched the whistle right out of his hand. Before Barnaby knew what had happened, the wind had vanished and his kettle whistle was nowhere to be seen. "Oh no," cried Barnaby. "Who will help me find the lost whistle?" Just then, an old lady with eyes like twinkling stars appeared beside him. "I can help you find your whistle," she said, "but I'm very busy right now, so you'll have to do everything I tell you exactly as I say. Are you sure you won't lose your nerve? You won't run away in fright? And you won't stand still when you should move?" "Yes," said Barnaby, though he felt a little scared. The old lady waved her magic wand and pointed it towards the horizon. "Go that way," she said, "and when you see someone who is always cold, even in summer, give them this flower." She handed Barnaby a bright yellow daisy. "Then," she continued, "go down that road, and when you see someone who is always thirsty, even after drinking lots of water, give them this flower." She handed Barnaby a bright bluebell. "And finally," she said, "climb up that tower, because someone up there has taken your whistle. Now go quickly, for the wind has stolen its song, and without its song, my magic will soon fade and we'll never get it back." So off went Barnaby down the road. And after a while he came across a woman who was always cold, even in summer. So he gave her the yellow daisy, and she thanked him and put it behind her ear. Then he went down the next road and soon met someone who was always thirsty, even after drinking lots of water. So he gave them the bluebell, and they thanked him and put it behind their ear. Finally, Barnaby came to a tall tower with a flat roof. He looked around to see if there was a ladder or a climbing frame, but there wasn't anything. So he began to climb. As he climbed higher and higher, the wind grew stronger and stronger until it was a howling gale. But Barnaby kept on climbing because he knew that if he didn't reach the top of the tower in time, the last note of the whistle's song would fade away forever. The wind roared and swirled around him, trying to knock him off balance and send him tumbling to the ground below. But Barnaby held on tight, and inch by inch he made his way to the top. There in front of him was a magnificent rooftop garden, full of all sorts of magical plants and flowers. In the middle of the garden sat a large stone lion with a bubbling fountain at its paws. And perched on the nose of the lion was Barnaby's kettle whistle. Then, out from behind a tree came a terrible monster. It had skin like wrinkled parchment and a great big mouth filled with sharp, pointy teeth. "Well, well," it said in a voice like grinding stones, "what have we here? A little boy who wants to steal my treasure?" For this was the great wind monster, and the kettle whistle was its favorite toy. The wind monster swooped down and snatched the whistle from the lion's nose. "Give it back!" cried Barnaby, but the monster just laughed and ran over to a nearby gargoyle. Barnaby chased after it, and the monster taunted him, singing little snatches of the whistle's song, just enough to make sure that Barnaby never forgot how beautiful it sounded. They went from one gargoyle to another, from one statue to another, and soon Barnaby was completely lost in the labyrinth of towers and chimneys. But he kept going, because he could hear the faint sound of the whistle's song, and he knew he was getting closer and closer. Then, at last, he saw the monster perched on top of the tallest chimney, singing the last note of its song. Barnaby had only seconds left to save the day. What was he going to do? Suddenly, he remembered the old lady's words. "When you see someone who is always cold, even in summer, give them this flower." The woman had been sitting on a park bench, so maybe she was always cold because she couldn't feel the warmth of the sun. Well, that was something Barnaby could fix. He closed his eyes, picturing the woman in the park, and summoned every bit of strength he had. Then he blew. At first, nothing happened, but then a tiny breeze brushed against his cheek. Then another breeze, and then another, until at last it became a big, strong gust of wind. It pushed and pulled at the monster, making it teeter and sway on the edge of the chimney. "No," screamed the monster. "Don't blow, little boy. You don't know how strong I am. Just watch as I finish your kettle whistle song, and it becomes my treasure forever." And then it began to sing, "Wee, wee, wee." But as it sang, the wind blew harder and harder until, wee, 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 the monster was blown right off the chimney and tumbled down into a soft pile of leaves. Then the wind monster lay still. Its song had faded away, and it was no longer a fearsome beast. It was just an ordinary jackdaw, and it hopped away as quickly as it could. Now that the wind monster was gone, Barnaby's kettle whistle was free. It sang out once more, loud and clear, and Barnaby caught it before it could vanish. Then, holding his prize in his hands, he began to sing along, and the two made a beautiful melody together. The wind heard the song and became calm and still. All the leaves and branches fell quiet, and the clouds drifted slowly across the sky like fluffy white sheep. From that day on, Barnaby and his kettle whistle continued to make music together, and whenever they did, the wind listened and did its best to join in too. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, when the wind blew cold and the rain came down in torrents, and the lamplight flickered on the wall, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, "tapping at my chamber door, only this and nothing more." Distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Iki,